I had a whole crazy show of events about 4 years ago, and I used a solicitor's firm in Manchester that were infinitely expensive and cost spiraling out of control. So during this sort of like their services, I cut their services. I actually represented myself in court for the last bit, which was great because I won. And then as a new, basically it was for custody of my daughter. So I found myself to be a newly single mum, and so I'd gone from 2 incomes into a household to just a single income household. And so once everything had settled down and I had won custody of my daughter, I kind of was like, right, okay, finances are tight. And so I had this huge bill, which had been spiraling, and I'd kind of brought it to their attention. And so I'd been chipping away at it. And then anyway, after a while, we kind of agreed that we'd do some sort of payment plan. And very long story short, that didn't sort of come to fruition. They then sent to High Court, and I got onto a payment plan with them. And that was just before the pandemic. Just as the pandemic happened, I lost my mum, which was very sad. And I defaulted on the payments, held my hands right up. Like I had a lot going on.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, I don't know, several months or so later, I get what's called a statutory demand. I had no idea what a statutory demand was. Absolutely no idea at all. So I reached out to this company and started to try and negotiate a payment plan with them. Had no idea how to set it aside. I've now read the Insolvency Act, so I do know, but I had no idea what sort of what I needed to do. So I started to negotiate with them. Negotiations were getting really, really difficult, absolutely difficult, and they just started to threaten me with bankruptcy. And so that became really scary. I don't have any assets. This flat that I live in is not mine, unfortunately. And I don't have any assets, and I'm a single mum. I also work within the IT sector as a consultant, and within I'm not a consultant anymore, but I kind of look after consultants. A lot of that is within financial services. So to be made bankrupt would be to lose my job, essentially, and to lose my home, and to lose my daughter's place in private school. All those things just destroy my life, essentially. And so that was keeping me up at night, as it probably may well have done for people. And so one very late night, I was researching the heck out of my position and trying to, I'm a bit of a geek with stuff like that. And so I'll just give me input. And I came across your videos. I think it's Terry.
Yes, our chairman.
Videos. Honestly, they are so informative. They're so informative, and they sort of talk about pros and cons for bankruptcy, and gave me so much more information. So I'm also wildly dyslexic, so reading stuff, well, actually, oddly, legal documentation makes more sense to me as a dyslexic, but just so listening to podcasts and listening to things conversationally really helped me to kind of grasp what I was learning. And so I was just like, right, this company looked like they can help me. So I sent a message, and then I think Blair contacted me almost immediately, and we had about a 2-hour conversation where we kind of set the scene, and he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. So it was very much the hook into Bell and Guy. I had no idea you existed. Was very much down to the really excellent, and there aren't many people that are putting out content like that's so informative. And so informative, but equally human. So so that's how I found you.
I like to hear that. I'm usually the person behind the camera in those, so I'm the director for Terry's videos and everything. So it's
Well, there we go.
Reassuring.
They're absolutely brilliant. They're gold. They really are gold.
I'd love to hear that. Love to hear that. Okay. Well, the kind of answer the second one was about what it was that made you want to appoint us. That's kind of been answered there anyway, and just that Terry, I'm sure, singing his praises. I won't tell him he said that.
I guess there was something else within that though, and it was one of the videos, and he was stood outside of it was just so human and natural, and I think he was stood outside a pub. Is local, I think it
The
was.
Duke of York, yeah.
And
It's literally just around the corner from our
is it
offices.
exactly? So, and he was talking, and it was just so. So he came across as very knowledgeable, very sort of, I guess captivating, charismatic in that sense.
Yeah.
But equally very, very human.
Mhm.
And there's lots of occasions in sort of these times where I'm dealing with the solicitors that are behaving like they're robots anyway. I desperately just wanted somebody human to talk to. So that's it.
You've kind of hit the nail on the head. I think that's the core of our company always is to obviously have the knowledge and the ability to deal with these, but we are aware of how difficult these situations are. And although your situation is sort of unique in a way, but there are so many people in similar ones anyway, and it's good to always give that kind of reassurance.
And then, once I'd spoken to Blair, and he listened so patiently, and he was so empathic, with sort of the conversation, and then it kind of went away, and I got another call, and appointing you guys was. I was just about to say, what was I going to say there? There was something in the, like I say, in that human sort of, in that human touch, in that kind of really. Oh, and that was the thing. We talked about the structure of the people, the team that I would look after the case. That was also really interesting to me because it was a mixture of different skill sets. So I work in IT, so I work within multidisciplinary teams. I see the bonus of bringing sort of specialisms together, and how rich that can be. And I think it was Blair and then Michael that kind of really explained that to me, that there's a team that looks after it, and there's accountancy, there's insolvency, there's all different types of kind of professions within there. And for me, I was like, wow, that's great. That's exactly what I needed.
Yeah, love to hear. Well, next one then, just sort of, well, you've answered again a lot about the start of it. What was the overall process like for you? So obviously you've talked a good bit about the start and how you got brought on, but also then in terms of your strategist and the team working on that on the back end, kind of, and getting the settlement for you in the end.
Yeah, so the team, so there was one consistent person, which was great, because then you're not kind of having to re-explain everything. So although I knew that that Luke had lots of people in the background that he was talking, liaising with, I had one person that I could talk to regularly. So once I'd appointed you, then kind of my case was given to the team, and I got that one person. That person happened to be Luke, and he was the person that helped all the way through, and he was most informative, also flexible. I thought that was really good. So there's at one point that I wanted to reply to a message, and I was like, well, I said, can I throw lots of information at you for you to include in the email, because there's certain contexts and certain things I want to draw attention to that you just won't know. And he was like, oh, absolutely. So it was very much it felt very co-created in that sense. And so I sort of was like, right, here's some of the bits, take out what's not relevant. I appreciate that some of it's emotive to me, so please get those bits out. And he did, and it ended up being a great sort of message that was sent to them. And then we kind of went through a very difficult sort of predator. I mean, they seemed to just not being rational at all. And like I say, from a commercial standpoint, we kind of went in with the commercial standpoint, like, you'll get nothing. I kind of gave them all of my income and expenditure, so I earn significant. I earn very, very well, but I am a single income household, and my daughter's in private school, and given the nature of, I guess, the breakup and everything else, and it was domestic abuse. I'm not ashamed to say that I'm a survivor of that. For me, her being in a private school means that she has the emotional support and the educational support that she needs.
Yeah.
Very important to me.
Of course.
And again, all of that was, listened to. It was fully understood, even though the solicitors weren't. And so, so it was, I felt very informed all the way through. And the negotiations that we sort of did were, again, co-created. And he was like, I can advise you this. What do you want to do? And I was like, well, I'm not sure firebombing is appropriate, but no, I guess I'm joking. But I guess it was very much a co-creation, and that was the process. And then we got to the assessment, and that was great. Managed to find the settlement money. They gave me a ridiculous timeline for that, and to my mind, I was kind of like, if I had that lying around, I probably wouldn't be talking to you. Like I wouldn't just be talking to you in this sense. I'd be like, and so from that perspective, I did manage to go off and have a speak to friends and family and got the settlement together, which I believe was the lowest that they would have gone to. And so I believe that I got the best settlement that I would have done, and I don't think it was the lowest that it ought to have been from their perspective, because it was a 4-year-old debt. However, I do believe it's the lowest that they would have settled for. So from that perspective, and then equally, given that I'm not sat on bags of cash, that Bell & Co was super flexible in terms of your fees and payments to make sure that you never ended up as a creditor. So I started to pay you for fees ahead of time, which were all banked. And so by the time it got to your fee at the end, I already had money with you that was banked against it, which actually really helps. And I hadn't thought about doing that. I think it was Luke or Michael that suggested. I was like, that's a great idea. Yes, let's do that. So
what about the sort of emotional side? Whenever Luke actually called you to say that we had managed to get a settlement for you, how did it feel whenever you actually got the call?
Oh, so I got we'd so the assessment that being on the table came really late on in the negotiations. So we were still kind of in the conversation of how much per month, and then so all of a sudden there was like, well, we'll settle, and we went back with a number, and I was actually in a workshop, an all-day meeting. I came out to Luke, and I've got to say I was practically in tears because they said no. And Luke was phenomenal. He was great. He was just like, listened, held space. He's like, right, I get it. And he said, I will do everything I can to support this, because I think, and I just felt like I felt like I had a team of people behind me, which is incredibly empowering when you're taking on a solicitor's firm who know the law inside out. And that feels quite overwhelming and intimidating. But the layperson, I might have won in court, in a family court, but going up against solicitors actually in court was a bit daunting. So, but then when I got the settlement agreement, at first actually that wasn't the point at which I was elated, because if I'm honest, I didn't have the money. However, I went away for the weekend, and when I came back, a good friend of mine, in fact, my ex-husband, not partner that was in the domestic abuse thing, but offered to be able to lend me the money, and so that I could pay it. And that call was great, because I rang Luke and I was like, I've got it, and and he was like, yeah, and like, hence the then sending donuts and stuff to the office, because I was just like, yeah, that was a great morning. It was a great morning.
Fantastic. Love to hear it. I'm sure Luke will be happy to hear this as well.
Honestly,
been singing his praises.
I genuinely, I said to him, I was like, and also I met Sam through that as well, because I think it was a couple of points. In fact, there was one point that Luke actually came in and was dealing with my case, right? And he had a whole bunch of personal stuff going on. and he wasn't feeling very well. And we were talking so often now that we were sharing sort of
Yeah.
personal stories, and he knew how old my daughter was, and I knew he had a little one that's sick.
Yes.
And he was like, "Oh no, so there's been a sickness bug in our household, and I'm not feeling great." And I was like, "Why are you there?" He was like, "Well, and I was like, "Thank you, go, like, go." It's like, I felt dreadful. But and then I spoke with Sam as well, and equally, I said because I asked Luke, said, "Can I have the email address of your grown-ups, please?" I always call them my grown-ups. I'm
Yeah.
pretty much director level, but there's the owner that's above me, and I said the management, or however you guys are
Yeah.
structured. I said, because I really do want to write a thank you email, and it's to broader than you. And modestly, he still never sent me that email. I did realise that Sam was, I think, his manager, so I sang his praises to Sam. So
Too right. Yes, I'm sure he loved it. I'm sure he loved it.
he's very modest. He didn't. It was like,
Yeah.
it's
Okay, he always is. He always is. But yeah, part of the reason that we do this sort of thing, if we can get people to agree to it, is because I think it's very easy when we're getting settlements every day for people to forget the actual like emotional and the impact that they have and the kind of the way that the relief it brings and
fine. I mean,
everything.
yeah, I mean, just to summarize, like the impact was I was about to, having just rebuilt my life of the
Mm,
last 4 years, having come out of a domestic abusive relationship, got my, come back to Manchester, rebuilt my career, having been on maternity. So I rebuilt my career, got my daughter settled into a private school, and managed to, sort of hack myself up the career ladder again into
mm,
a role that I adore, and back up to sort of director level. And so to have all of that hanging sort of in the balance,
mhm,
I can't tell you the impact. I mean, like I say, I literally slept for the first time, even just appointing you guys, I slept for the first
mhm,
time for all the way through the night, you know.
mhm.
And I think I spoke to, I think it was to Blair possibly the next day. I was like, I'm so groggy. I slept through the night. Like, and I haven't slept like that for ages, because I genuinely, felt as though I felt powerless to
Mhm.
what this solicitors firm were doing to me, and for not significant numbers of money either. When you think about a solicitor's hourly rate is it's £500 an hour.
Yeah.
Not many hours would have made up the debt that was there, and so it felt like my entire life was hanging, by a thread.
Mhm.
And so the impact was phenomenal, and I,
Yeah.
yeah.